Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Cosmere Connections. We're a bunch of book-loving nerds looking back and rereading the entire Brandon Sanderson series involving the Cosmere. My name is Reader. I am joined with Swiggity Swoo.
Hey, another white guy on a podcast.
We got DragonKieran.
Joining for the heck of it.
I'm just one.
Hey everyone, I'm just one.
John.
Hi.
And Kay.
Oh no.
Hey!
And today we are here to review Mistborn, The Final Empire, Part 1, The Survivor of Hathsin, chapters 5 through 8. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Yeah. So I had chapter 5 this week. I'm going to give a little summary. We'll talk about it with no spoilers. So chapter 5 starts with Kel basically clearing out the lair after they had their little initial meeting. And then we see Dox and Vin and Kel all kind of talking, and Clubs comes back. Clubs shows up and he says that he didn't feel comfortable with the smoker being around, and that he's also...
A soother.
Sorry, I meant to say soother, right? He's a smoker, which means that he wouldn't have even been affected by the soothing, but he clearly has some kind of grudge against soothers, I think. Just by the way he was talking. Anyways, he basically also mentions that he's gonna get found out eventually, so he figures trying to take down the Lord Ruler would be a cool way to go out with style. And then Kelsier talks about how he needs some atium because he spent most of it buying someone named Orsur's contract. And he also used the rest of that at Tresting's estate. So they go up to the roof. Kelsier puts on what's known as a mist cloak. He takes a vial of metal and he shoots off into the night. And we get a really good description of what it's like to be pushing and pulling with iron and steel. And we see all Kelsier's little tricks. He flips up onto the roof of Keep Venture, which is like the biggest, baddest noble house around, according to Dox. He immediately slits the throat of a guard. He's not really worried about that at all. He shows no remorse. He pushes another 2 guards off the roof, and then he slips into a little chamber. And, to make a long story short, he eventually finds a safe behind a mural that he's pretty sure contains the atium he seeks. And he gets ambushed by haze killers and takes them all out. He makes a big scene, because part of this is he wants to be seen. And one of the cool details is that it seems like a lot of the stained glass windows shatter. He actually pushes a haze killer through one of the stained glass windows, and then he uses the safe and uses iron pulling and steel pushing and iron pulling to use the safe to kind of as a grappling hook to go outside the walls, and it's just really cool scene. And then he's he gets to the ground, he sees a dead nobleman, he says, "Hey, even if I don't get some atium," and I was obsessed. But he finds the atium. It was actually in there. And that's pretty much all for chapter 5, except I did want to mention that in the epigraph at the very beginning, it talks about some Terrace philosophers, and it says that I'll know what I'm supposed to do when the time comes. Only I can destroy the deepness. And I don't think you're really supposed to know exactly what that's referring to if it was your first read through, but I did want to mention it.
Vague prophecy, fantasy, bullcrap.
Right.
I would say something that I would like to point out about this chapter that I just really love is that this is the first time that we hear the phrase, "There's always another secret."
Yes.
Which,
Yeah.
if you know anything about Mistborn, it comes up a lot. The fact, or the Cosmere in general, is that there's always another secret. There's always something new that you're learning about, that you're finding out, and that the characters are learning. There's always another secret. And this is the first time that we hear it, and I think that it's so funny because it's in reference to a secret drawer having a false back to it, with an extra bottle of wine in it. That's the really nice stuff. that Kelsier finds.
That line has really good payoff because later, when he's in the keep looking for the atium, he sees a safe and he immediately disregards it because he thinks, that's too obvious. And then it pays off because he finds the other secret safe and he gets to say that line again.
It's like an
Secret
immediate
safe,
payoff.
safe things.
Yeah. So even within this
very
chapter,
It wasn't safe enough.
safe.
more like a danger. I also noticed that it kind of says he sees the allomantic lines going. He sees an allomantic line pointing beyond the mural, and he assumes that that's the locking mechanism of a hidden safe. And he just wastes no time and just rips it right out of the wall.
Yeah.
Which is good because he's trying to leave a scene.
Yeah, Kel has no subtlety in this scene whatsoever. He's not a very subtle person.
I was going to say, just in this scene?
No, just in general, he's not very subtle. Which is really surprising because he's been a thief for lots of years and hasn't been caught, and yet, only has been caught once. And
his strong suit doesn't have to be subtlety. He just has to be darn good at being flamboyant in every other way besides being himself.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Play your strengths.
We did see that he wasn't really subtle with the prologue, though, with Lord Trusting's manner. Which I think the fact that they comment upon it, and which we've seen them comment upon it in previous chapters, and even in the next chapter, no, they don't comment on the next chapter. They comment on this activity. But the atium, which we've only heard whispers about, this apparently, whatever it does allomantically, gave Kelsier the edge that he needed to do all of the deed that he did in that prologue.
Yeah, where he takes out, however, all the guards.
I remember my first listen to of this book, and anytime atium was mentioned, I got really excited even though I had no idea what it did, just because it sounds really cool, and the way they talk about it, it's like, it's going to be this badass thing. And I like that they don't tell you specifically what it does. It leaves your mind to imagine, possibly.
At least for a while.
Right.
Brandon Sanderson can't go a book without explaining everything.
True.
Speaking of sounding cool, haze killers.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's too bad they're kind of like chumps. Like, they're supposed to be all awesome and stuff, and they just go down like chumps.
Well, they're still normal people.
They gave Kel a run for his money.
This is true.
Maybe a jog.
I think all the haze killers were there to do. I mean, not all they were there to do, but part of it was they were supposed to delay him or take him out quickly because the Allomancers were coming. Which I forgot to mention. He has to flee because a bunch of Allomancers show up, and that's a little bit above it.
He takes a few hits where he has major bruises on his arms and his ribs.
I like the idea. Sorry, I
think
the idea
he
that
gets
he's using tin to stay awake during that.
Yeah,
because it makes him feel the pain more.
Yeah, I think he got hit in the head, I think, a couple times as well during this. So he uses the tin to help clear his mind. Which I think is a really interesting use of tin that we see. Because it's not something that you would really think about. To enhance your senses.
You'd want to feel more pain.
Yeah, who would want to feel more pain?
Right. But it shocks you awake. And gives you that sense of clarity that you need in a moment when your brain is fuzzy.
The little stab of adrenaline.
Yep.
Anyway, I'm curious. I want to know how chapter 6 hooks into 5.
Yeah. So 6 is interesting. Chapter 6, because we switch to Vin's point of view again. We're flipping back and forth between Kelsier and Vin's point of views throughout this entire book. So we're back to Vin's, and she's at Clubs' shop. She has made her way over to Clubs' shop, and she wakes up, and and it's interesting because she's just feeling she feels like it's not that she doesn't deserve to be there, which I think is a big part of her character, and the fact that she doesn't feel like she deserves to be there, especially in this first book. That she doesn't, that she's like, why am I getting all of this nice stuff now?
Mhm.
So, and Spook eventually comes down and has her come up, take her, tells her that she needs to go, Lestibornis comes down and tells her in his weird language, dialect, street slang dialect, Eastern street slang, that she needs to go upstairs for their meeting.
Above is the way, what's is the doing?
Yeah.
That's what he says.
Master jumps.
Which we did actually see him in the previous chapter, Clubs, when he returned. He was kind of in the background.
Yes, Lestibornis was in the background there. Yes, like
Awkward boy, basically.
yeah, yep, very awkward boy. So and then they start to lay out their plan for what they're going to do. So Kelsier is kind of the ideas guy. He's like, I have the big idea, but I need y'all to help me break it down. So he has all of the crew like talk about what they need to accomplish, what are the big challenges that they're going to have in accomplishing this plan. And they
Do I look like a guy with a plan?
And they essentially come up with 8 things. Sort of 9. Is that they need to do something about the Luthadel garrison. They need to get some troops. They need to deal with the great houses. They need to help make sure that the Ska Rebellion knows what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
They need to do something about the ministry. They need to do something about the ATM treasury. They need to cause chaos in the city. And they need to do something about the Lord Ruler. So they kind of lay down their plan and they assign people to different groupings. Vin ends up getting assigned to be to infiltrate the nobility, and she's like, I don't know if this is a good thing for me to do. She's like, why are they letting me do this?
Why would you even give me this job?
Yeah, she's like, why would they give me this job? This doesn't make sense. And Kelsier's is like, you're gonna do great. It's fine. And then at the very end of the chapter, Marsh shows up. So this is the first time that we've seen Marsh. We've heard about him a little bit. He's Kelsier's brother. And he shows up and he kicks everyone out of the room. He's like, I want to talk to my bro by ourselves. Please leave. So everyone leaves. Vin pretends to leave and then comes back to spy. And that's
Like
kind of as she does. And that's kind of the end of the chapter.
I'd like to add on for this. One thing that I found interesting was just like how crucial Vin's ideas were for actually helping for the
I
board,
love that.
right?
That's
Yeah.
what I was gonna say.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so it's just like, right, so they're like, well, what do we do? They had no idea, and Vin's basically like, just lure the garrison out, get him distracted. How do we do it?
ATM mine.
Pits of Hathsin.
I like the way
ATM
Kelsier
mines,
phrased
like-
it. Because he asked Vin, if you're fighting an opponent who's a lot bigger and stronger than you, what do you do? And she was basically like, well, you don't fight him, that's for sure. And then she used her real world experience to come up with it. That was so cool.
I just love that Vin was able to like add something important to this. And it shows that already on some level she's already mingling with this group intellectually.
Right. I just like reading this bit and then, some stuff later on just kind of makes you think like, would the, like, I'm sure at some point, like, what would these guys have done if they didn't have them? In this planning section, like, would they have come up with it? Maybe, maybe not. Like, I don't know. It just it just kind of reflected on it. It's just like how, like, I wonder how the crew would be different, like, initially, because right, because her whole thing is with like, yeah, let's do the nobility and stuff, but it's like, they've always been doing infiltrating the nobility, so I'm sure they would have potentially thought of some way to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm
it's like that
picturing
role, at least at this moment, we don't know how critical it is or isn't, but like they've all done like noble infiltrations, but it's like how would their planning have gone differently if Ben wasn't there to think about it? Anyway.
I'm
Yeah.
picturing Lestabornis at the Noble Balls, just trying to chill with Ellen.
Wuzzing is as wuzzing does. Am I right?
Trying to talk to them.
Trying to fit in, yeah.
Being so
Swiggity
awkward.
Swoo.
Oh,
Fine
Yeah.
is the booty, am I right?
also, I would just like to point out before we move on is that I just find it funny that they also on the board put up Yeaden's bad attitude.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
for things that they have to overcome.
For things they have to deal with, yeah.
They have to deal with Yeaden's bad attitude.
I mean, it's funny, but it's true, because you can't be a leader and be all like, nah, I don't like this. Nah, that's not going to work. Nah, I'm a sad sack.
Yeah,
It's just not going to work.
He did have a pretty bad attitude
Eden
at the
gets the
beginning.
short stick in a lot of this. But his reaction to Marsh was pretty impressive. I don't want to say impressive, but it adds a bit to his character. He sees Marv, and he's Marv. Harry and Marv from Home Alone. He sees Marsh, and he immediately like jumps up on his feet. He's like, "You're back! You're here! We are gonna do this!" And immediately to him, Marsh is the Kelsier figure.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
I hadn't thought about that, but you're right that like Marsh to Yeaden is like Kelsier to the rest of the crew. He's the person that was leading them for a while and then left and then disappeared for a while and is now coming back. Like you see how the like Dachshund and the rest of the crew get excited when Kelsier comes back. Like Yeaden gets excited when Marsh comes back.
I think we're gonna
Perfect.
see a little bit later too, like Kelsier and Marsh's dynamic, and I think it's interesting how Kelsier kind of acts differently around Marsh, to say the least.
Perfect segue into my chapter. I got chapter 7. So we start seeing that continuation from Kelsier's point of view, though. And we already see they butt heads all the time. And apparently, since they were kids, and he's the only person that can make Kelsier wipe that grin off his face. And we learn that both of them loved Mare, and that they both wish that Kelsier was the one to die in the pits, which is really depressing, considering what Kelsier is doing, surviving.
That's a gut punch.
Yeah. Kelsier kind of makes him, come on, let's do this for her. And he's like, okay, I'll think about it. And then he leaves. And Kelsier, I think it's through Steel, he noticed Vin scaring off and running back to her room. And then she pretends to be asleep in like the worst way possible. I'll give her credit of like undoing her shirt and like shaking her hair, but she's like, huh? Sorry, I was asleep. Never say you're asleep. But this is where the story kind of gets good, and this is where chapter 6 was pretty much the plot. This is the magic of Mistborn. Kelsier basically takes her downstairs, and she hears laughter from the kitchen, and she's reminded this isn't the kind of laughter she's used to hearing. This is honest laughter. These people are actually happy and having fun. And Kelsier returns, and he gives her a box, and in it is her own Mistcloak. And I think this is this is one of my favorite things is that he's like, here it is. You get it immediately. This is who you are. You don't have to earn it or something. This is who you are. which I think a lot of fantasy books kind of have that. You need to earn this. You need to earn the sword. You need to earn this level of magic, and yada yada yada. And this whole chapter, basically, here's all the magic. Do what you want. And Kelsier takes her outside, and we get a full dump on what the magic of Allomancy is. And we learn, and I'm going to try to go through these one by one. Correct me if I'm wrong. Steel and iron. We learn that all of them are paired by an alloys. Steel and iron. Steel pushes metallic objects, iron pulls it, in which you push and pull upon your weight. If you push on something that's heavier than you, you get flying back. If you pull on something lighter, it comes at you. Vin accidentally skewers herself with a nail.
She almost skewers herself with a nail.
Yeah, almost. Then we've got Tin and Pewter, in which Tin heightens senses, in which she notices the stars in the sky. And that's one of my favorite scenes in this whole book.
Me
And
too.
that's such a nice addition to, ash falling from the sky. It's all red. Ash mounds cover up everything, and you can almost barely see stars.
That's just a perfect symbolism for Kelsier expanding her worldview, right? Expanding her perspective.
And Pewter makes you strong. Pretty basic there. We learn about Copper and Bronze, which are the mental. The first four were physical, these one are mental. In which Copper creates a copper cloud around you, which basically hides your allomantic pulses, but also protects just you from being affected by emotional allomancy. Bronze, on the other hand, allows you to sense a person's allomantic pulses, and basically when somebody burns a metal, it releases a pulse. And if they're not burning copper, other Mistings seekers can sense that. And then the final two are zinc and brass. And I always confuse them. I'm pretty sure zinc riots and brass sues.
I think it's the other way
That's right,
around.
yeah.
I'm not so sure. One of them riots emotions and makes you can get angrier. Also, one of them soothes them where you can get less angry, which we notice that Vin has burned
Yeah,
that. That's
it's
been
verifying zinc riots brass suits.
You're right.
Okay.
Yeah,
All of a sudden,
correct.
I
I
write a
want
fanfic on
Mistborn.
this. You'd think I would know.
All of
In
a sudden, I
which-
want a Mistborn Incredible Hulk crossover.
The sun's getting real low. Burns zinc. Burns brass. Burns brass. Burns brass. In which we learned that her luck, in which we've already kind of noticed, but now we're getting confirmation, brass has been her luck, and she's been soothing other people's emotions. We also learned that she has also burned pewter to make herself strong, and that was that brief flash in chapter, I want to say 3 or 4, when she gets up after Cannon hit her. Was it 3? Getting silent confirmation that it is
Not that
3.
important.
Not that important, true.
Yeah,
I'm getting distracted. In which not only do we get this whole magic dump, we also get repercussions and a philosophy, and how every push there is a pull. In which we also learn the weaknesses of these metals, in which loud noises can hurt a person burning tin, the fact that copper hides bronze, bronze can get you caught, which is why they need a smoker. Pewter, in case you're carrying something really heavy, or if you're bleeding out and ignoring the wound, you can immediately just get squashed or just keel over and die. And it's really interesting that most magics will continue to teach you stuff along the course of a book series. I mean, Harry Potter learns how many spells from book 1 to book 7. But here we get the 8 basic metals all in one chapter, which we've been shown them. Literally last chapter we saw Kelsier using all of them to fight, and now we're getting a full exposition on what each of them can do, what are their weaknesses. And the last thing that really happens is they come up to the wall. And basically, Kelsier drops a iron ingot and he says, push against it, and then they go up the wall.
He specifically says, because I love this quote, where he's like, good, now let's go jump over that wall. And she's like, what? And she's like, you're insane. And he's like, that's the second time today you've said that to me. You need to pay better attention. If you'd been listening to everyone else, you'd know that my sanity departed long ago.
Which that comment with Clubs back in chapter 5 when he's like, "So you're insane, huh?" Completely.
Yeah.
Yep.
The pits really did drive you crazy, huh?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I also want to just this is one of the quotes about consequences that I just really liked a lot. So it's that every action we take has consequences, Vin. I've found that in allomancy and in life, the person who can best judge the consequences of their actions will be the most successful. Which is a very big part of allomancy, is talking about consequences. Push and pull, give and take. What are you sacrificing in order to get that power?
Mhm. And the metals reflect that. Steel and iron is pretty obvious. You push metal, you pull metal. But with the other ones, pewter, you're pushing out strength, while with tin, you're pulling in basically what's going around you. With rioting and soothing, you're pushing out emotions or you're bringing them in. With bronze and copper, you're pushing out elemental pulses, while with copper, you're kind of bringing them in and hiding them.
It's actually pretty beautiful.
It's really, I love how Brandon was able to incorporate philosophy into this magic system.
Yeah.
My mind is like blown hearing this discussion right now. Oh, it's so
Yeah.
cool.
I love that. This is something that Sanderson does in not only the Mistborn books, but like in all of his books, is he incorporates a lot of philosophy into it. And I really enjoy it. That's something that I really enjoy about the books and
Yeah.
stuff. So
Trust me, I'll enjoy a lot of some of the future chapters that talk religion and philosophy. That's like a major focus of mine in my own life and my own kind of thought pattern. But that'll be very fun for me to kind of address later on. But I do like, I'm glad you brought up the whole the actions and consequences, because this is a theme throughout the entire series
Mhm.
that is going to actually get brought up and be, critical at different kinds of points. But like, just watching it as an outsider reading the book, that's, you can see as people change, as things happen throughout the book, like these major things, and you already see, right? It's, there's a consequence of using allomancy on, like obligators, like actions,
Mhm.
consequences, actions, consequences. It turns up throughout the entire, like it's a running theme. So
Mhm.
I'd like that. I'm glad you brought that up.
Before we move on to chapter 8, do we want to comment which of these 8 basic metals we would want most? Which misting you would want to be?
ooh, I would want to be a tin eye.
We're talking in modern times, like today, if we had it like in our own lives today, or if we had it back then. That would change for me. Well, I'm going to want the day to day
Day to
probably
day,
be
like
different than
currently.
back then.
What would you want today, Dragon?
Uh, I'm thinking either I would probably go for either pewter or steel, or
Wow.
I don't know, pewter, steel, or iron. It's a bit of a toss up, but I think in the end I'd probably go for pewter,
Mhm.
just because, you know, running a life, working, households, like being able to like move stuff around, like you could use that for all sorts of fun stuff. If you want to, cheat in sports but not get caught. I mean, if you want to give
But can't
yourself an
do a
edge
drug
in
test.
sports, drug test. What do you have? Really high amounts of pewter in your system. That's
Yeah,
weird.
that's weird.
Drug test is just a metal
But
detector.
it's just like, I think just life in general, but being able to just like run on, obviously you have to be careful not to like run on like less sleep than you can and eventually just like keel over. But
Yeah.
most
basically
days
not a
I feel like I'm
caffeine.
already running on too little sleep, and I'd love to be able to have a little boost of energy too, for family, friends, self, whatever. Computer.
Makes
Modern
sense.
day coffee shop, the pewter shop.
Modern day coffee, but without the same levels of. I mean, there's probably going to be a mental addiction to it, but there's not a physical addiction like there is with caffeines and stuff.
Mhm.
So
I think I would want to be a tin eye, partially because then I can listen to my students' conversations when they're not when they're trying to not when they're trying to be quiet, because that's usually when they get into the most trouble.
I'm gonna run with scissors during recess. And no.
Just
Hey, I'm
premeditated.
gonna turn around and cut this kid's hair. That literally happened last year.
You couldn't even come
Um,
up with stories that are more ridiculous than the stuff you probably have to tell us.
What about you, John?
I don't know. I've been thinking about it, and I'm kind of like having access to any one of even the 8 basic metals. It would be kind of a life changing thing because, especially if you think about like copper cloud, that's not useful in a vacuum. So you'd only be useful in a setting where other people have this stuff, and I kind of feel like as a smoker, you'd be like strongly drawn to military or whatever. Same with a seeker. I think those would be the kinds of things that would change your life in a lot of ways.
Those two are dependent upon if there are other people with magic.
if there are other people, otherwise those
Right.
two are.
Imagine
Those two would
your
be
whole
useless.
life you've been a seeker. Imagine your whole life you see a seeker you have no idea about, and then one day you just start hearing ding, 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 ding. And
That's
you're
how I
like,
met my
"He's
wife.
And it just leads you to a magical world. Wait, Hogwarts is real?
I know what I would pick. So my day-to-day job is a machinist. I set up these big machines to make tiny little screws, and I've dropped so many wrenches that I've had to reach in and awkwardly pull, and just if I could just
You'd be a
iron
lurcher.
pull that, I would be the happiest man in the world. I want that so bad.
That's why
yeah.
Ironwood was my second backup, is because the number of times that I'm sitting there and I just want my cup to come to me
Yeah.
from
I
across
would be
the
the
room.
laziest Jedi ever.
Yeah, exactly. Iron
Like
pulling
literally,
is the peak of laziness.
right? You just
Yep.
sit there. You just have to make sure like you're everything is spill proof and everything is metal. Like
Mhm.
utensils, plates, knives, forks,
You
spoons,
gotta make
bowls.
sure that it's not coming too fast at you, so that it doesn't
You
stack.
just
So it
get really
doesn't
good
hurt
at catching. You just play lots of catch with yourself.
Fork!
How can you have a bad day if when you leave for work you just put your hand up and your keys fly to your hand? Like, how can you have a bad day?
Yeah,
Cool.
like seriously, yeah. That just makes you. That's why that was kind of my number two. It's just like you just gotta,
Yeah.
man. After a long hard day, you just sit there and you're just like, for those that
Mm-hmm.
alcohol drinkers, right? You just like open the fridge and like beer flies to you, or
By the cat, though.
Oh, I could use that beer.
I think I would probably pick soothing. Like, I think in this day and age, like, if we had somebody that could soothe people, that would solve a whole lot of problems.
See, that's great, but first you got to get in front of them with the internet.
Yeah, but I'm
But
saying,
yeah,
like,
soothing would
imagine
be
if a
awesome.
politician, granted, this is probably one of the problems with it, but imagine if a politician could, like, soothe a crowd, or even like a policeman. Imagine a policeman that could soothe like an angry crowd.
That's smart.
True.
It
Good
kind of
stuff.
gets into iffy territory, and that's where a lot of people have problems with Rees. It's like, where does compulsion meet control?
Right.
But let's move on to the final chapter.
Well, for today anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah,
part
not the
one.
final chapter of the book.
Yeah.
We'll just skip from 7 to like 23 or
So
whatever.
Vin
Yes.
dies, and then
And then the next episode, we'll be moving on to book 2. Sorry. On to chapter 8.
So chapter 8, we do a little more practice with steel and iron. But going back to chapter 5, when we were talking about using tin to kind of give you that jolt of alertness to kind of shake yourself awake. There's actually very early on a quick little line in here where it talks about Vin burning pewter, not for the strength or the endurance that it gives her, but for that sensation of solidness that it provides to steady her nerves. So that's another kind of secondary use for an allomantic skill that we see from time to time. They eventually decide to do a little cross-country exploration in the dark, in the mists, and they stumble across a mist wraith, and we find out that they're not nearly so dangerous as the legends would have you believe.
And that
They're real.
And that they're real in general. I mean, the stories had to
Although,
come from
quote,
somewhere, right?
the nobility has their own uses for them, end quote. As ominous as that is.
Yeah.
Yes. More on that later.
Right. I just wanted to drop the fun
The foreshadowing.
quote for everyone to think
Yeah,
about.
no, it's
the
excellent
foreshadowing.
point.
Yeah, I'm gonna raffo that.
Yeah. So once they go through that little scene, they meet up with Sazed, who
The last
whisks
of the merry
them-
men.
Yes, who whisks them off in a carriage to Feliz. On the ride, Vin and Kel talk a little bit about trust, what it means to be a part of Kel's crew, kind of the extreme reluctance to rely on anyone else that we see from Vin, kind of showing her internal sort of emotional, psychological damage that she has kind of come with, to the point where Kel almost turns the carriage around completely.
He does.
He does.
It.
He knocks on the door and says to do it, but then she kind of like says, "No, I'm in," and they keep going. I don't know if it explicitly says that they do turn around, but it doesn't really matter.
It does.
I really like that part because it's like Kelsier has offered her so much and she still doesn't trust him, and it's only until he's basically saying, "Look, if you want to leave, you can leave," that she's finally in.
Yeah. She even goes so far as to say, "Well, what's keeping me here now that you've given me all the secrets?" And he's like, "Here's a big bag of money. If you want to go, go. You're free."
It's
Yeah.
her
Yeah.
money.
Yeah, and she totally
Yeah.
snatches it and like tucks it away, and but in the end, she decides to sign on, not because she trusts anybody or anything like that, but because she wants to see what happens. Which, take that for what you will, but what I find interesting is that it seems to be good enough for Kelsier, even though he's like, we rely on trust, we have to have this to work. And she hasn't really committed that yet. So,
But he has her curiosity.
yeah, he's kind of taking a gamble on it, which that's par for the course for Kelsier, I guess. So finally they make it to Feliz. They meet Lord Renew, and Sazed. Well, Kelsier and Renew go off and have a little conversation in private. Sazed talks to Vin, and we kind of get this first inkling about his fixation with belief systems. And that's kind of our first kind of look at the other ways that people look at the world and spirituality, or may have at one point. We haven't really dived too far into that yet, but it's a beginning. And
So,
that brings us to the end of the part.
I would like to point out that Sazed is also not a Ska, and he is not a nobleman. He is a terraceman,
Yes.
and a steward. So he has a completely different role in society, that we'll learn more about as the book goes on. But It's
In which we have heard about terrorist people in the indentations above each chapter.
yes, we've heard about terracemen in those little before parts and about terrace. But this is the first time that we're meeting a terraceman. So, and I really enjoy Sazed. I love Sazed.
How do you say Saz? I say Sazed. And that when Kelsier does says, I do says. But otherwise it's Sazed for me.
Just hard for it
Audiobook
to
is
and
Sazed.
my brain for it to work that he would change the sound of the whole name for when you shorten it. But I mean, because that's usually how it works. But I mean, again, Brandon says pronounce how you want to pronounce in your head.
Yeah.
Go with how you want to go.
I like Sazed is one of my favorite characters. I really enjoy him, and I like his introduction with Vin, especially when both the two of them are alone together, and Sazed stands ramrod straight behind her chair, and just like I just picture him just standing like this, like just like looming over her a little bit, and she's like, "Can you not? Can you move?" And he's like,
Can you not stand there?
yeah, she's like, "Can you not stand there? Please move." And he's like, "Okay, I'll move." And he takes like one step forward next to her chair and like proceeds to stand in the exact same position. and at first Vin is like, "What is he doing? Why is he doing this?" And then she sees a little smile on his face and she's like, he's messing with me.
The comedy in this section is real. I love when Kelsier and Lord Renew, who we meet again, who Kelsier said he messed with and that he is an imposter. And this is the guy that Kelsier has been sending Scott Swoo in the prologue. When they return and he comments to Vin and she's stuffing like bread into her pocket. And she's like, she's a little bit paranoid and kleptomaniac. Who, me? I think that's one of my favorite funny scenes with Vin.
I just picture like bread like half hanging out of like her pocket, like just like
Exactly.
Limbus crumbs.
Which would explain why she's a bit less refined than other court members, Kelsier said. No offense, Vin. Vin looked up from hiding a piece of napkin-wrapped bread in her shirt pocket. Why would I be offended? Never mind. I love that scene.
Yeah.
Can't help but love Vin when she does stuff like that.
It's kind of sad, but it's really adorable.
Like how she checks out Clubs' shop when everyone's asleep. Sorry, go ahead, Kay.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say, do we want to move on to the spoiler section if people don't have anything more to say about Chapter 8?
I think
I would enjoy that. Move on, keep on a timeline.
Yeah.
Okay. John?
No, that sounds like a good idea.
Okay. This is a democracy. Not really. I'm in charge. Ha!
You're a benevolent
Swiggity does all the
dictator.
work. But Swiggity does all the work.
That's how a government should
Democratic Republic. We all told you to be in charge, and then we just hope that you listen to us, and really you just do whatever you want.
It's kind of true.
Very on the nose.
Okay, so thank you all for listening so far. I hope you had a really great time finishing off part 1 with us. If you want to stick around to the spoiler section, you are free to do so at your own warning. We will be talking about stuff that occurs later down the line, later in this book, later down in the series, or later just in the Cosmere. Who knows? But in any case, we would like to thank you for listening so far. In case this is where we leave you, I'm Reader.
I'm Swiggity.
Dragon.
I'm John.
Kay. And I'm Kay.
And this has been Cosmere Connections. Have a nice day. And we're back.
Now we can get back to our favorite parts.
Yeah, so I do want to loop back to I do want to talk about Swiggity's comment earlier about the Northern Mystics, and yeah. So the quote is it says, "You can't change how much you weigh." This is in reference to allomancy and to steel, iron, and pewter. As saying,
I think it's just steel and iron.
I think it's also referencing pewter a little bit there, because pewter makes you stronger, but it doesn't change your weight.
Yeah, it just gives you muscle.
It just gives you strength.
We are now
But the quote is, "You can't change how much you weigh. You're an allomancer, not some northern mystic." And I was thinking that that is a good reference to feruchemy right at the very beginning of this book, where we don't learn about feruchemy until halfway through.
Near like 3/4 of the way in, because Vin asks about it, in which we learned that, and this is kind of getting into how the magic works. Allomancy is N positive, in which you get a magic power, whilst feruchemy is N neutral, in which you store something away to use at a later time. In which what Kelsier is implying is that they, using the same metals, get different abilities, and that a keeper, which is what Sazed is, he can store his weight, currently making him lighter, but then he can tap that later and make himself extremely heavy for a time.
Okay, new question, guys. Now that we can open it up for spoilers, out of all 16 metals of allomancy, what would you want today? And would it change?
See, mine would be only mine would have to relate to, are there other allomancers? Are there other magic users?
No. I would say just go with like what do you have? We're not granting allomancy blessings to everyone. It's just like you are special and unique.
Okay,
In
so
my
that takes away all the enhancement metals.
Right.
What does chromium do?
It slows down your perception. The one that Steris has, or not Steris.
Chromium is
Marasi.
Thank you.
Yeah, Marasi.
That one. I want to see the future.
No, chromium is the one where if you touch somebody, their elemental reserves.
No.
Cadmium is a pulsar.
Cadmium is a pulsar.
Oh, cadmium.
Marasi has.
Correct.
Yeah, cadmium.
You want cadmium.
And
you want cadmium. Bendalloy
Okay.
would be really cool too.
Yeah.
God,
I don't need to be the Flash in a 6-foot radius.
I got the chart up. I got it chart up. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Can you share?
You got. Sure, I will.
I've also got the. Yeah, I pulled the chart up as well because I was trying to remember what they were.
I think I'm going to put it on the podcast.
Coppermind, and then type in allomancy, and then it gives you that, and also an explanation for each one. Now, see, I think all of these are great and wonderful, but honestly, what I would rather more is I would rather have feruchemy. But I mean, out of the ones that we are given, I think this is.
We're gonna limit to allomancy right now. Let's not start moving into the different magics until let's do feruchemy in book 2 and then healergy book 3.
Oh, okay.
Or at least once they're introduced to the book.
Yeah.
I'm just.
Our spoiler section has to have some reign of control.
Otherwise, I'm totally with you, Dragon. I would totally rather have.
I would store fortune. Just throw it out there.
I would also rather have feruchemy than allomancy, so I'm with you there.
So let's see. Can't have any enhancement metals because those rely on other people. So we've got the basic 8, and then we've got temporal, in which cadmium pulls time in a bubble around you. That's what Wayne has. You've got
no. He has
Bendalloy speeds up. Bendalloy speeds up. Cadmium slows down.
You're right.
Cadmium is great for if you really want to, if you're chilling around, you really want to go to bed, and
you're waiting for New Year's.
The party just waiting for New Year's. You want your kids to go to bed, and you don't want to be there with them for very long. You can play for 5 minutes, and it's been 5 hours, and now it's bedtime.
Speaking from experience.
What? No.
I've always imagined how cool it would be to have a kind of forward time traveler, somebody burning cadmium, like flaring it repeatedly for a long time, and just like put in an area where they have food, and just like how long into the future can they make it?
That would be
Jeez.
interesting.
That's my
Like,
goal.
That would be really like even
That
if
is
they
what I
had
want.
like if they had a Nicro burst with them, like repeatedly Nicro bursting and just doing that over and over and over again. How
Yeah.
far could one person get?
I
Next-
don't think.
Go in. You could have them go until they become a savant in it.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
but how that could lead into like stasis pods. When we're getting into the space exploration, they literally put them in a container that burns this metal with et metal or harmonium or cesium or whatever it's going to be called, in which it literally just slows them down compared to the rest of the time.
We can't pick
I mean, that'd be
Lerasium,
interesting, but
No.
right?
We can't pick any of the god metals.
No. You can. So we've got the basic 8,
16.
and then you got the 4 temporals, in which we've got cadmium bendeloy, we got gold, and
That makes 12.
And
So-
then electrum.
You have the enhance. Yeah, I guess you have to exclude all enhancements, but
Yeah.
That's a perfect
Specifically
segue into
2 of 'em.
mine. My band has a song called Electrum that we wrote before I read the Mistborn books. So I would just have to pick that one. Like, just also it'd be kind of
reveals
cool.
reveals your own future.
Yeah,
It reveals a
seconds.
future, yeah. If
Potential.
if you're standing at a crossroads, you can see what each one does. Whilst gold, you can see what your like could have been if you had made it.
Right. Well, Electrum is self ATM. So
Yeah.
That would be kind of cool. I think I would actually like to have Electrum. That would be kind of cool to
Electrum's
have.
really cool.
It would be awesome.
You could totally game that to like try and win the lottery too. Well, what if I pick this number? Well, what if I pick that number?
Yeah.
What if I bet
It's
on
the Rick
this
and Morty
team?
episode. It's the Rick and Morty episode where Morty has the gem stuck to his head or whatever.
I'll take
would-
your word for it. I haven't seen that.
I don't care for Rick and Morty all that much, but I've seen it.
I don't either.
And our viewership just tanked.
Probably.
Cosmere
would
Connection
probably-
podcast is not associated with Rick and Morty.
Uh-huh. Being a lurcher or soother or an oracle. Those would probably be my top 3.
You gotta pick
It
one.
seemed-
feel
I'm
like
gonna
it's
stick
talked
with-
about at some point, but can a soother or rioter soothe or riot their own emotions?
nope.
No,
You
they're
cannot.
external.
No.
Because they're not only divided into push and pull, they're also divided into external, internal. Internal mental is copper and bronze. External is zinc and brass. Trust me, I've gone into this. It's been a whole argument with me.
When
and my editor.
when Breeze talks about it in book 2, he's like, "Man, if only I could, do something for myself."
Okay, that might be where I'm remembering it from because I remember they talk about it.
Oh,
Mhm.
Yeah,
imagine
no,
like
he kind of thinks it to himself because he's like, "I can give everyone else bravery, but man, I wish I could use some myself."
Mm-hmm. Like, imagine how cool that would like if you give yourself, I want to get up, I want to work today, I want to be happy. Like, imagine how helpful that would be. Or imagine the people who, what are those people who get up on stage? You can do it. You can soar and fly.
The inspirational, like,
Inspirational
speakers,
speakers.
motivational
Yeah,
speakers.
like they're all rioters.
That's funny.
They're all writers and soothers.
Uh-huh.
That'd be
Well, I imagine
funny.
there would be more rioters, but
Oh, wait,
Yeah.
and John, what would you want if you could have all 16? What did you say?
Cadmium, I'd be a pulsar. I want to see the
Okay.
future.
Yeah.
He just wants to
Nice.
go into the future, have that culture shock that's like when you wake up for 100 years sleep. Oh man, it's been 100 years. Like that.
I wanna go
that's basically,
farther than
what would
that.
happen to you.
now he's Futurama.
Yeah. So
Pretty much.
something that I do want to bring up because I liked it. So this is in chapter 6. This is the little excerpt before the chapter.
Mhm.
Is it's the reference where it says it pulses in my mind far off in the mountains. This is the first kind of reference to that pulsing in the Well of Ascension that
Oh,
Vin feels in the next book. That pulsing in your mind, feeling far off, that Alendi is feeling.
I forgot to do
um,
mine. Mine had Rashek name dropped.
Oh
yeah.
yeah, it
Right?
yeah.
And honestly, these ones all have. And I was going to bring up 8. Also, is the first part of the. It's the first prophecy piece he quoted. He shall defend their ways, yet shall violate them. He shall be their savior. Yet shall call him. Yet they shall call him heretic. His name shall be discord. Yet they shall love him for it.
Which
So that
I would like to point out that Sazed fits most of these.
Say
well, that's the
And-
point.
Yeah, I know,
That's
but
why
but is the question,
Also-
does he fit the prophecy or the prophecy molded around him?
exactly, that's the question.
I think
I
it's
like that
interesting.
they say his name shall be Discord when Discord is literally the exact opposite of what he becomes.
Just gonna say
Harmony.
that.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
so
Okay,
and,
sorry for stealing your thunder,
No,
Swiggity.
don't. No, you're good.
and there's a word of Brandon that says that the combination of ruin and preservation could easily have been turned to discord instead of to harmony.
And probably can still be if he ever misuses
Oh
it.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I kind of want to see a really upset Sazed. Like, imagine if, I guess I'm gonna say Ambition because that's my here. Ambition like takes a chunk out of schedule and just see Harmony lose it.
And turn into discord.
Or chaos, like the opposite of harmony is chaos. Like, imagine. We have never seen the power of a shard really used to its utmost potential. We have seen it with basically Sazed fixing Scadrial. We've seen a little bit of it with Odium, and that's about it.
I was thinking, like Stormlight spoilers, but the idea of taking like ruin and preservation and mashing them together to make this new thing called harmony really reminds me of like Warlight power. It's got to be the same idea.
I think
Yeah.
it falls under the same vein, but it's those two shards. For some reason, Preservation and Ruin are very special in that they are directly linked together. Like, they're two puzzle pieces that specifically go together.
Yeah,
other
like
one's kinda
devotion.
Well, here's
and
the thing:
Dominion.
all 16 are
Yeah.
actually are belong together.
Yeah, but
And so the thing is, if you combine any two, it's going to make a completely new set. And I think there's been people that have talked and theorized about, like, well, was it always going to splinter into these 16 particular pieces from Adol Nalcium? Or is it because of those 16 specific people shattered Adol Nalcium that they got those 16 specific attributes out of Adol Nalcium?
I thought I read that it had to do with the intent of the 16 as well as the Dawn.
It's all been, from what I saw, it's all theorized and none of it's
Yeah,
been
we've
confirmed.
Yeah,
And
it's
first
all
we got
none of
more on the Dawn
speculation.
shards.
Right,
It is
but you
all
know,
speculation.
We know that the Dawn
is it a
shards were
base-
used,
right.
and that they basically created the 4 different kinds, and each of the 4 Dawn shards created a label that encompasses 4 of the shards. And we know one of them is change, and we're guessing cultivation, ruin fall under that, and then there's also a kind of theory that preservation can fall under that. 'cause
I
it's
could see
lack of change.
preservation. I could see
'Cause it's
preservation
on-
falling under that.
It's under all aspects of change, right? We have
Mhm.
preserving change or making change.
Yeah.
What
But
is a
we don't know
Dawn
what they are.
shard?
That's a great question.
Aiden Alcium,
Something
when
we
he
should-
created... We should not
Something
get
we should
into this.
touch
We should
later.
not get into this.
No.
Not- I can go on a tangent.
Look up under Coppermind, folks. We're running out of time.
Yeah.
We
I
don't
was
have
just
another 3
curious
hours.
because they talk about him so much, but it's like pinning down what
It's never talked about specifically and very clearly.
Right.
Yeah.
It's some sort of power, obviously, that
Basically,
we
when
see
Aiden
someone
Alcium
get.
created the Cosmere, he used these 4 things to create them. And
Okay.
if we're implying that the 16 shards are aspects of what makes you human, these are sort of how you act. Kinda.
Gotcha.
So, quote, the Dawn Shards are the 4 primal commands that Adol Nalcium used to create all things, which can supercharge the powers of anyone using an invested art, allowing for acts of magic that transcend what is normally possible, such as destroying an entire planet. That's just the first line from Coppermind. The rest everyone can read on their own. But
And one of
you're
those
turning
planets
it's
could be Scadrial. which we should
For all
return
we
to.
know,
Or the Shattered Plains. If you can turn
or the destruction of the not Braze but the other one,
Ashen.
Ashen. The destruction
No,
of
I thought that
Ashen.
was Surge's.
that was
Yeah.
that one was given directly to just people using regular surges that just weren't that were just unchecked.
Okay.
So
Okay, let's
that's
move
a
back
group
to
of people.
Mistborn. Let's
Okay.
Yes.
let's move back to Mistborn.
Let's focus back on Mistborn. And one other quote that I would like to point out, since we're talking about Mistborn and spoilers about Mistborn, is a comment in chapter 8 where Vin is thinking this to herself, and she says to herself kind of, Reen had kept moving, always going, as if running from something. As a reference to them always moving around. And she was as if he was running from something. I wonder what he was running from. As we learn later on, he knew that that there was an Inquisitor coming after Vin, and that was chasing them. So he was constantly moving them to hide. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
And that's why he left her, was because he knew that was the only way to protect her, was because they could find him, and they were tracking him more than they were tracking her. So he left her and abandoned her to save her from the Inquisitor.
In your eyes, is Reen redeemed with how he acted at what we've learned about him?
No, I think that he had good reasoning for what he did. I don't approve of his actions for what he did to Vin. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Are the rest of us, are we all in agreement with that?
Does a, not saying this is my vote or anything, but does something like essentially is abuse justified when all you're doing is you're trying to save someone's life? I mean, if you think about the amount of stress that someone is put under in being in charge of someone else's life, just in a setting of being a teacher, that's, obviously abuse isn't justified there, and I can't say that abuse is ever necessarily justified, but when you think about, someone is just running from basically the KGB who has, monsters on their side, the amount of stress that's going to put on someone, people generally will lash out at others because of it, especially when they link their actions directly to someone getting caught.
Especially considering his life and he can't
I can't ever condone abuse, but it puts a realistic perspective on it that everyone at some point will lash out at someone that they love because of stress. Everyone's done it.
I think it just more speaks that he had no other way of going about it.
And he didn't think he had any other way. Maybe there was, but in his perspective and where he was, with the life experiences that he has, he was truly trying to do his best to help his sister,
does not
who
redeem
he did
him.
love.
Yeah, which does not redeem him. I do not condone what he did to Vin. And we have continued to acknowledge in this show how damaged she is, and that she is adorable at times with sneaking the bread, but she is she has no concept of trust, period.
Yeah.
And
we don't obviously, though I don't think anyone here condones, condones abuse, right? Because everyone's
hopefully
generally
not the school teacher and the parent.
Yeah. But at the same time, there is an aspect of just there's a realism that we think that we kind of say, oh, he abused her, even though he was trying to do it to help her. It's we've all done stupid stuff that we regret afterwards.
How? You don't agree with how, but you want
I don't have to agree with the how, but it's again, just let's all think about it for a second, right?
If
we've all yelled at parents, we've all yelled at siblings.
If Vin at any point said well, sometimes Reen and me would go for walks and we had a good time and he was actually decent most of the time. If there was any of that, I'd say yeah.
Right.
You know, he was doing what he thought was right, and even when he abandoned her, it was him making an ultimate sacrifice. But I just
and that's
I
one
don't
of
see
the
it.
few times I feel for Reed is when went through the entire torture of the Steel Inquisitor and still kept her secret. That is
Yeah.
that shows that in his way he cared for her,
Yeah.
but he just could not help her.
He didn't know how to, he didn't express his care in a good way. He wasn't able to do that. I don't think he knew how to do that in a way that also he felt would keep her safe.
Was it in chapter 8 where Kelsier and Ben talk and she says, "Why doesn't your brother beat you or whatever? Did you run
Yeah.
away?"
Yeah,
it's
did
like-
Yeah, when
you
they're in the
fight him?
carriage.
Did you fight him off?
That's so
Did he
heartbreaking
beat
that
you often?
she can't envision a sibling just caring, or just you get into an argument and that's it. Like I fight with my brother all the time, but I can count the times on my hand that's actually led to physical confrontation.
Right.
But Vin in her mind is like, "Oh, so why do you talk back against him? Doesn't he beat you? He doesn't? Did you run away? Why are you guys still talking?" Like, in
Did
her
you
mind, she
No,
can
it was a did you fight him off? Did you beat him then? Cuz one of
Yeah.
you has to be beating the other one. Like that's the way it works. Um yeah, it's very sad the
She
way
doesn't know
that
trust and she
her
doesn't know love.
yeah.
And that's where Reen can't be condoned or
Mhm.
condoned, but can be understood. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the point that I was getting at earlier is that I understand why he was doing it, and he had a I think that he thought that what he was doing was right and that this was the best way to do it. I don't agree that it was, and I think that he shouldn't have done what he did to her because that's horrible to do that to
Almost
anyone.
gotta wonder if he was okay with doing it. Like, he was obviously like, you can't trust anybody. You got to keep moving. Like, did he himself believe these things, or was he just trying to make Ben heartless, not care about anybody, so they don't hurt her?
And in a sense, he might have, because I mean, think about the time that they were raised in, right?
And
But
Anyone
their
maybe
can
that's
mother.
why. But
anyone
maybe
with
that's.
justification can kill anyone else. Like,
But maybe that's why he was trying to teach that. Like anybody can betray you. Like he literally watched his mother try to kill his baby sibling, try to kill Ben,
yeah,
and probably when
anyone
he's
can
trying to
betray
save
you.
her. Like
Yeah.
I almost gotta wonder if he is doing this because this is how he's trying to understand. He's trying to save Ben from a pain.
And he saw that Vin always got attached to the people that they were with when and in the cruise that they were with when she was younger. And specifically was like you can't get attached to people. You can't do that.
It's
I
so
never thought
heartbreaking
about
when
that.
she wants to tell Yulef in that one chapter where she wants to tell Yulef she's leaving because she just doesn't want to be alone, and he immediately tells Cayman.
Yeah.
And I've almost gotta wonder if Kelsier didn't show up, like, would she have become completely emotionless, exactly who Reen was trying to turn her into?
Well, she probably would have died because that's what she said. Cayman
True,
was too drunk
true.
and too angry beyond the point. She had no allomancy left. He would have killed her.
And then we get Lester
Yeah,
Borgness at
so-
Noble Balls.
Exactly.
Man, this has been pretty depressing. We started off talking about magic, and now,
Excellent.
familial abuse.
Well, on that lovely note,
Is that anybody else have anything else to say?
Gosh, I have the most minor thing in the world.
Oh, please do.
well, as long as it changes the subject, I'm sure people will enjoy it.
So the scene where Kelsier and Marsh are talking and Vin is eavesdropping, Kelsier says that, like, there's some line about how the allomantic lines are thinner because they're going through the wood. Is that because the wood used to be alive? Like, kind of like a warbreaker?
No, it's because basically you can still pull on it through the wood, but something's in the way of it.
Oh. So
Sort
the,
of how,
Yeah.
like, you could see through. What's a good example?
Like you can see through a window, but you can't like easily like throw something through a window, or like you can't like pull something through a window.
Or like one of
Like-
those ones at a person's door where it's the glass is warped. You can't really see through it.
Like frosted
Perfectly.
glass.
Yeah. But you can
The
still
glass
like
warped
you can
glass.
recognize a figure coming at you.
Right. And when this also goes back to just general, like, Brandon Sanderson just follows, likes to follow the kind of themes of, like, just real life physics, which is just when there's, like, matter will simply affect other things, even when you, like, start looking at, various levels of radiation. You're looking at various levels of, like, he deals in these kinds of realms of, like, physics and reality, just with a slightly augmented sense to it. So
Yeah.
all of
Even
his,
though it's not technically light, it's like acting as light.
all
would
sorts
act.
of magic. His versions of investiture have an aspect of energy, and so if there are things that are interfering with energy, which matter is a form of said energy, and there's going to be static energy inside of the walls that's going to affect other forms of energy, like investiture. So simply just having walls in the way will simply just affect it, at least to some minor degree, because we're dealing with the physical realm, not necessarily cognitive or spiritual.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait until he starts including quantum uncertainty in his books.
What was it? What's her name? Cal? The author
Who?
of the Ars Arcanum.
Chris?
Chris, when she starts talking like string theory and quantum entanglement.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if like
that'll come in era 3, probably 3, 4.
That's gonna be 4 with Space Age.
like let's say there's a giant
we're talking about
spaceship
it now, so
behind a black hole. Can you see like the Allomancy lines around the ring of the black hole? Like,
I would
does
think
Only
that-
if investiture is affected by gravity, which we can safely assume it is because gravitation is one of the powers granted in other forms of investitures. So
but the surges are actually wait, we cannot do this again.
See, the warping of
We should-
space-time is
Well, okay. Thank you all for watching. This has been Cosmere Connections. As always, we hope you remember that there is always another connection. Have a nice night. I'm gonna make a brief change to the intro because I feel like I say Cosmere with every third word.
fair enough.
do whatever you
Reasonable.
want to do. I have full faith in you.
Because I was listening to episode 3 and I was just like, hello everybody, this is Cosmere, welcome to Cosmere Connect. We're a bunch of Cosmere loving Cosmere knots, and we're rereading the Cosmere by Brandon Sanderson, which is the series of the Cosmere.
That's literally the best intro you've ever done.
You should do that.
Oh, thanks.
It's always great. Yeah.
Yep.
Just take that audio and play it over everything. This will be the week of distractions, apparently.
Yeah, we're all kind of off.
Okay, ready?
I like turtles.
Okay, ready?
Let's go.
3, 2, 1.